Darden graduate from 5 years ago, 1987, right? So this is her 5th reunion. In fact, she was a classmate of my son, who graduated the same year. Laura is a West Coast banker. She's from San Francisco, so she's been this weekend and to see her father. We also have Ellen Goodman, who is visiting with us. Ellen's been here every year at the bonus. We're glad to have her. And then we have our speaker, Tony Turner. You have some background information on him. Tony Archfield has a very varied background, as you've seen information you have. And so I'm going to let him tell you whatever else you might want to say about his background and let him have the class. Tony?
Thanks. Thank you. A couple of surprises. One, everybody's sitting in the back, and I'm standing in the front. Two, they're videotaping this thing, so that's going to foul up my language. Three, Ellen Wagner is also here. She's a consultant to us. She is a communication consultant and has been evaluating various performances that we've given over the last few years. I am told that this is Management of Small Enterprises class, and I'm supposed to talk to you about exit strategies. So I will do that. I will talk to you about how to get out of companies. In so doing, I will tell you about 7 rules of finance that I was reviewing yesterday and today so I could be more articulate than normal about them. And I will use case studies. Now, presumably you all have looked at Beauty Labs, which is Redken, Korn Ferry, which is the executive search company, Cellu Tissue, which is a real live name company that we will finish acquiring on April 30th, Joe Bass, which is really Joe Trout. I changed his name. And Golden State Vintners. And we will go through how you exit from companies like those, which are small to mid-sized companies, and the rules of finance. The most ideal way today that some people seem to think to exit a company is this one. There's a whole new lending setup going on right now in banks called debtor in possession lending. And so if you want to get a company and get it out of trouble, put it into bankruptcy first. Banks love to lend you money. It's the only thing they'll lend on right now. You can't get a car loan with 90% down. But you can get money for debtor in possession when you go bankrupt. That's the first way that I can think of to exit. Another one is going public. And let's talk about Redken Labs. Do any of you know that company, Redken Labs? Never heard of it. Redken, you know, the hair preparation stuff kind of thing? Okay, go public. They have a big display when you go in hair. Right now, it's fairly topical to go public because we used to say in the brokerage community, when the dogs are eating it, let's feed them. And the dogs are eating it out there. You can take almost anything public. You get 5 clocks like that and take it public at 20 times earnings. It's unbelievable what's going on out there. Funny little companies with no earnings, no history, no nothing are going public. Some high tech, so on and so forth. Well, back in 1970, it was just like today, a company doing 10 million in sales, I better go over here. 1 million in profit, pretty good profit percentage, not bad, after tax. And a $1.8 million net worth. I won't write all those words down, I presume you're watching that. Decided to go public. So they took the shares owned by 2 people and made 2 million shares. Does anybody know the earnings per share of this company now? How about dividing the number of shares into the total earnings and getting the earnings per share? Good idea. 50 cents. It's in the case on page 2. 50 cents a share. There's some murmuring. Did nobody got the case? Huh? Oh, today. No, forget that. We're going to teach you how to take somebody public. At the end of the next 3 minutes, you will be able to take somebody public by yourself, okay? That's what we're trying to do. We don't care what this company is today. I'll tell you that in a minute. 20 times earnings, the price of the stock is what? $10, okay. Now that's rule one when you go public. You don't want a stock less than $10. We're going to sell 400,000 shares to the public. We're going to have, therefore, 2.4 million shares outstanding. What is the dilution to the owners? Hello? 16, good. Whoever said that. Who said that? Good. I'll be calling on you again. That's a good company. 16 2/3%. 4 over 2.4. What is the market value of the company? Just prior to going public, it's 20. Just after you go public, it's 24. Here's a company that's worth $1.8 million, now worth $24 million. Not bad. Second rule, never less than 400,000 shares. You need, why? You need money, you need it for the aftermarket. Yes, sir?
That 1.8 figure you have is
Book value.
Right.
And book value is her value. It's the same as now as market value. Book value is irrelevant because now there's a market for the shares.
Yeah, I'm just saying that your 1.8 is book value, 24 million is market value.
Right.
And they're obviously.
But if she were going to the bank, they'd be looking at that. Paula Kent at Redken Labs, they'd be looking at that. When you go to the bank after that, they look at the 24 because then they have the shares that might be saleable. Okay. Is this a good way to exit a company? Anybody have an opinion about that? Yes?
You haven't really exited the company completely. You've created, you've laid the foundation to ultimately exit, but you haven't. In fact, your money's still tremendously tied up in it. You only sold about 60% of the company yourself, and you're still tied in very much.
Yes, John?
Plus, in the IPO, I think it's the expectations of current management's going to continue to run it. I mean, they think that you're using the money to further expand or better capitalize.
That's correct. John?
When you go to try and sell that, your 2 million or your 1 million each shares to exit, you're going to find a lot of concern because of all those shares flooding the market. So you're not going to be able to sell out in a block, sell off a tiny piece at a time.
There are some rules being a parent, quote, of a company, SEC, how much you can sell. But if you're selling something like 2 million shares into a 400,000 share float, you're precisely right. You sell it very carefully, very slowly. Dottie?
Plus, you've now taken on the responsibility of answering public shareholders, which is a new problem for management if they were interested in exiting. That's something that is really hard for private owners to get into.
Precisely. You know how you phrase it? You're only as good as your last quarter. In other words, if the earnings don't keep going up, the stock price goes down, in which case you probably can't sell it, you can't use it for acquisitions, and so you're stuck. So it's not a perfect out. But if somebody's going to give you $20 million in value, Mensa, and you really thought you were really worth something like this, more or less, you're probably going to take it. Now, funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Paula Kent, that's K-E-N of Redken, Jerry Redding and Paula Kent, she threw him out, got an offer for $36 million for this company after the filing of the S-1 registration statement. Now we have Paula Kent worth 16 2/3% of 24, or roughly $20 million, and somebody just offered her 36. Part of that's in an earnout, so let's not call it 36, but let's call it 32 in real cash. Now, one of my rules of finance is called the sale valuation theory. It's about number 6. I'm working backwards today for some reason. But it seemed to fit with this case because this case demonstrates it perfectly. Paula Kent got an offer for $32 million to sell the whole company. Now, what do you do? there's a lot of take-its. You know, last year and the year before that, it was one of those, no, 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 no. No, no, she's going here. She'll sail through that so fast it'll make your head spin. Well, yes.
$20 million is funny money right now. It's contingent on future success. It's contingent on being able to flood those shares on the market, but $32 million is cash.
Anybody else think that they should stay in the thing for the 20 million? Stay in the company, run it, do better, build it to a $100 million company? Yes?
I was gonna say, if you have a buyer out there for 32, then maybe you can sell it, if 20 is not realistic, and I can go out and now I can start marketing around the 32 level, even though there's a control premium that's placed on that. You know, I can sell it that way.
Broker-dealer wears two hats, new rule. Okay, another rule. Broker-dealer wears two hats. You got to represent the company, but you also represent the public. So one of the things you can't do, or you shouldn't do, is overprice something. And the worst thing you can do for the company is to price that thing at $10 or $12 or $14 or something and have it drop. The next case will show you what happens when you do that. So this is, you got to ask yourself, if you're selling a part of a company, a division or something like that is not totally relevant to this, but if you're selling a part of the company in the public, or you're financing something, or you're giving up some of the company for debt, what is it? What is the whole company really worth? Because it might be worth a lot more right then and there, in which case you could preempt this stuff. I have a personal opinion. I would burden the hand. I would take the 32 and, try it again, because you can make a lot of mistakes with 32. And as somebody said, that although Donald Trump seems to have had started with 100 and he makes more mistakes, gets rid of it faster than anybody I've ever seen. Then we have another company called Korn Ferry. It went public. That's the second couple of pages. Now there's a company doing $1.5 million in volume, but look at the profit percentage, $250,000. There's 500 shares outstanding, and I think it's $550,000 of book value. This is a true story. All these are true stories. Nothing fictitious about this. They had made a commitment to the people in the company that they would go public, because they said, you're coming over from Pete Marwick or someplace else to start an executive search business with us. We're going to go public. There'll be a market value for your shares. We're going to use the shares for acquisition. And they thought it would be very good for the public image to be out there as the only public company in the search business. So they decided to go public. My arm was twisted to take them public back in 1969, 1970. As I said, no small service company should go public. That's a new rule. Not one of the rules of finance, but that's the rule. No small service company go public. You don't ever want to do that. Your inventory goes up and down the elevator every day in the service business, so you don't want to be taken in public. Inventory is people. That's all you got. So we took it public at $8 a share. We sold it to my mother, Dick Ferry's aunt, Les Korn's mother. We sold it to everybody you could sell it to. And we finally got $1.2 million into the company. And the stock went to $7 a share. Yes. Right. Yep, and I brought two rules. One is the number of shares, and the other is the price, because that's now called a penny stock. But I was one of the founders of Korn Ferry, and they said they were going to go to a bucket shop in Los Angeles to go public, and so the powers that be at the brokerage firm I was an investment banker for said, yeah, we'll do it, because they're such really good guys. And this is what happened, and it was a mistake. Don't want to break the rules. So back in the end of that case, it says, did you really accomplish anything? How's the image in the public right now? What do your employees think when they got options at 8 and their stock's at 7, so they open up the paper? It looks real good, doesn't it? I mean, it's perfect. Oh, good. I got to buy it at 8 and it's at 7. That's not good news. So this didn't work. So they lost people. So that's another rule. I'm not going to go through the expenses of what it costs to go public unless we have a lot of time in the end or something like that. But that's all in the beauty lab case for you to see. That brokerage percentage is about the same as it was today. Somebody asked what happened to Redken. Went to about 80 million in sales, never reached a $32 million market value, and was sold to somebody else, and the owners retired. So there's a message in that one someplace. Third way to exit something is a private sale. You see the company called Tissue? That's in the specialty paper products business. We have the commitments to finance that, so this is a real-time transaction. I mean, except for my equity source, which is drying up. But anyway, we have the debt and the mezzanine. Anybody know what I mean by debt and mezzanine? The debt meaning the senior debt, that's the bank generally, or a Westinghouse or a Chrysler Credit. The mezzanine being somebody like a mezzanine player. It used to be junk bonds or high-yield bonds and things like that. Now people like Barclays Business Credit, things like that. That mezzanine usually is a convertible subordinated debenture and gets warrants and some interest rate and so on. So we have all that done for that company, and it's the $17 million purchase price plus $3 million of cash that's in the, as you can see in the case, in the till, so it's 16.7. What do you think about what the owner is selling his company for? Did you look at that price versus his earnings? You folks know what, do you use profit after taxes, or you deal with the word EBIT? Do you deal with EBIT? Okay. Back, earnings before interest and taxes. What does that look like to you? Does that look like a good price, bad price? Bad price for the seller, bad price for the buyer. Correct. We are. But then again, you can't finance anything more than 4 to 4.5 times EBIT today, maximum probably 5. 2 years ago, we were paying 10 and 11 times that for companies. No more. You can't finance them. Yes?
But, I mean, wouldn't those multiples be dependent upon what kind of industry you're in? I mean, it's just,
Some?
as a rule, not that much variation.
Right. Because as a rule, you can only lend X amount. A banker is going to say, what are you paying times EBIT? Okay, so before you even go to your equity holders and say, this is a 38% IRR or something like that, the banks are going to say, what are you paying for this thing? So if you say 6, you get a lot of coughing and sputtering, people gazing out of windows and stuff. It doesn't work. So, yeah, you're going to pay the same thing for a high-tech company? No, probably that one's going to go public. But in a private sale, this is where you are right now. Even for a good company. This is a good company. Did you think this was a good company? Anybody like this company? Especially find something wrong with it? Why wouldn't you buy it if you were us? Nobody has a comment, okay? Oh, sorry, Todd?
The specialty segment of the market is declining, so I mean, their proportion is growing, but it's an overall declining market. It's down 15% from 88 to 99.
That would scare you a little bit? Yeah. Of course, when you buy it at 4.1 times, and we know of some other companies we can put with it, and then we can take it public like Redken Labs, and, you know, let the management be only as good as their last quarter. We're the owners. So we think it's a good risk. Did you notice the financing in there? In two places it says we have $2.3 million in an overline and $1.2 million in excess cash. There's a word in there. It's the second rule. It's in quotes, belly punch. The belly punch theory. no matter how smart all of us in this room are, we sit down together and figure out precisely whether the market is going to go down 15% and what we do about it, and are we covered, and so on. The day that this thing closes, something is going to go wrong. Murphy's law is that if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Turner's law is that Murphy was an optimist. Because every company that we've ever financed, and I've been in this racket off and on for 30 years now, it's a long time, something's happened to it that we did not have any idea about. So we've now overfinanced this thing so it can, quote, take a belly punch. You want to make sure that when you finance something or you get involved in a company or somebody's going to hire you to do something in some company now, make sure that that company can take a belly punch and so you're not on the street looking for a job unexpectedly, because this will happen. The belly punch will happen. The next case is Joe Bass. That's Joe Trout. He's my favorite case because he has so many rules. Yes?
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
You were a 2% limited partner.
Archie is 3% general partner.
What is?
In selling tissue, is Archie?
Archie will own 67% of the company. Our investor group will own 67% of the company. The 2%.
Who's the general limited partner?
Well, first of all, Archie is the general partner.
Okay.
The limited partners are 25 people that put up the equity. But the 2% in there are the 4 managers of the company that are staying. Each one is buying 2% of the company.
What obligations does the general partner have? What risks does the general partner take with the limited partners?
The limited partners are at risk only for the amount of money they put up, and each one is putting up $100,000 for the equity. So they can be no more required to put any more money up. The general partner can, if it commits itself to do something, is liable for anything. GPs always are liable for anything. You want to be a limited partner. The problem is we're a general partner because we're the one putting the deal together. We have to be the general partner. So anyway, let's go on to Joe Bass. Joe Trout, that company is called American Technologies. Blue Chip Inc. was American Can. American Can sold American Technologies. It shows you the strategy we went through to try to get that company. A.B. Dick, a huge company, was bidding against us. And then we were representing management that was running American Technologies. That's Joe Trout, Joe Bass, in your case. So we represented him to buy that company. And we made a deal that was palatable to American Can more so than A.B. Dick's deal was. And we bought it. But back there are 3 alternatives for financing this thing. $6.6 million was what it took to buy it. This was back then. Did you notice that there was $100,000 of equity in the thing? Back in the early 80s. $100,000 of equity. Now that's exciting. $100,000 bought roughly 75% of the company, 70 to 70% of the company. Those days are gone. You want a new rule? Nothing to do with my rules of finance. New rule. Management gets between 5 and 15%, depending upon the size of the company, the nature of the industry, other things like that, in a company. Buying some, getting options in some. That's a general rule when you're buying companies. This is what management should get, the management team. Here they got 70 plus for $100,000. But which of those 3 alternatives did you like? One of them has a bank. The other one has 2 institutions. One has participating interest for up to 20%. The other one has no participating interest but 25% of the equity. I guess a real good question would you be interested in risking your interest rate going up? How comfortable do you feel about the profit forecast of that company and so on? But did anybody have any strong convictions that you would not like to give up the equity so you take participating interest? Yes?
Given the choice of the bottom of these projections, I'd take number 3. I mean,
you've got the ceiling of 20% of your subordinated debt, and that's only about $200,000. And the potential equity value in the, for these other guys is substantially more than that for the equity give up.
So you take the participating interest with a cap at 20 and not give up the equity. Anybody have a different opinion, Chip?
I was just going to say, as well, is that in addition to that, you have less bank debt, so that you're going to have access to future capital. You may have some ability to borrow more, given that you're only taking $2 million in the revolver versus 4.4 for the bank equity.
You might have an opportunity to borrow more if you don't have participating interest in something. Ça va. Well, that's the one we opted for, and it's fortuitous. I mean, it would have been smarter, Bill, economically smarter, but much higher risk to take the participating interest. Been smarter economically, but higher risk.
It's higher risk because you have that fixed charge every year. If you don't make your profits.
But higher risk because of number two. Higher risk because the day that we closed that, A.B. Dick, who lost the bid, stopped shipping parts to the company for an essential piece of their equipment. And we're dead. Absolutely dead. Now, you can say, good, sue them, enjoin them, and all that sort of thing. We try to shy away from courts. We did have to sue them and so on, but we had another $1 million that we didn't use. We overfinanced this thing with an overline of $1 million, and so we sailed right through that until we were able to find an English supplier that supplanted A.B. Dick and so on. So it was, this was the reason. Economically, we should have been smarter and taken the 20% participating, but in fact, we took the equity give up. It was to Mass Mutual. They did the financing, and they stayed with us. A couple of more rules from this Joe Bass case. Financing is never one transaction. It's always more than one. So leave yourself, it's usually three. One another general rule. This one's to be broken by anybody, anytime, but anyway, I call it three. When you go to buy a company, cellular tissue or something else, private sale, figure that you're going to have to finance it 3 times from before you even close. Closing is one, you're going to have to finance it twice after that. In today's market, almost instantaneously, because somehow you violate a covenant within 6 months, and the lenders go bananas, and the next thing you know, you're financing it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about strategically planning ahead what you need to do. And so we had the option, without that 20% in there, of going to get some more money for an acquisition, which we made. We then did an industrial revenue bond financing. We had the balance sheet to do that. And fourthly, we sold the company. I'm not going to use that. We're going to go back to selling the company was, it gets to my last rule of finance. We'll go back to that one later. Okay. Fourth way out is a merger. I'll go back to this one here for private sale just 1 sec. It's almost a merger. We raised $1.6 billion to buy National Rent-A-Car in 1986. The equity was $6 million. Those days are once again gone. The company, we had a turnaround manager. One of our managers was fixing the company. It was doing quite well until all of a sudden the rent-a-car business went in the tank. And so performance was going in a line like this. And 20 months later, Ford bought Hertz, and General Motors panicked and came and bought this company for 8.4 times what we put into it, what our investors put into it 20 months before that. That's the 19th rule of finance, like the 19th hole is called pure luck. There's not one single iota piece of skill attributable to me, to my company, to anybody in the company that relates to that transaction. Buying it and thinking we had a franchise, one of the 3 largest companies, and trying to fix it was okay. I mean, it wasn't a stupid strategy, but our exit in that one was 100% pure, unadulterated luck. If we still owned it today, it would probably be worth less than we put in it, because it's having difficult times. Okay, the merger. That one's very, very, very self-explanatory. So I'm going to go to management buyout right now. Anybody have any questions about mergers? Anybody have a company they want to merge? Management buyout is demonstrated by Joe Bass. And the 4th rule is you're never your own best spear carrier. When Joe Bass wanted to sell his company, he felt he knew more people in the industry than an agent would, than an investment banker, somebody who was out there. So he decided that he would go try to make a deal to sell his company. And he came back with an offer for the company for $18 million. Now, since he only has $100,000 in it, and he owns about 70% of the company, this is quite a significant gain. We helped him, since we were on the board of that company, do a little analysis of what that company might be worth, and we found another British company that paid him $38.6 million for his company. You're never your own best spear carrier. You're too emotionally involved. You probably find, this is self-serving if you're an investment banker because you really want somebody to hire you, so very self-serving comment, but it really is actually true. The company store, something I taught for Professor Sealer one session a couple of weeks ago. The company store, we're doing a private equity offering for that company right now. We think we know how to do private equity offerings. That's how we get money to buy our companies. We've hired Dane Bosworth to do this for us. We're not our own best spear carrier. That's a classic example of, knowing when you probably should not be doing what you're doing. You should stick to your knitting and let somebody other professional do it. It's an interesting company. We'll come back to that one in a little minute. Okay, cellular tissue. Anybody have any other comments on the company store? I go too fast sometimes. On Joe Bass, Joe Trout, anybody have any? Let's stop a minute and go back into things and see whether Redkin or Korn Ferry or we understand the 4 rules so far? No questions, yes?
Can you go back over 3? Financing always takes more than one.
Yes, it's always more than one transaction. More than one transaction. The example was the Joe Bass case, which was really 4 transactions. And part of the strategy of getting out of a business is that's one of the ways that you determine that's a 4th transaction or a 5th or a 3rd or something, is how do you get out of this thing? And each one of these companies that we've acquired, we had a plan to get out. As you can see from the National Car example, the plan was irrelevant. Something happened. But we did have a plan to get out of that thing. It wasn't the way it worked. But what is the plan to get out of cellular tissue? Can anybody see an exit strategy for that one? That's why I thought it would be a good case for this class, because see if you could figure out what an exit strategy ought to be for a $25 million sales company in a niche market. Now, it probably can't go public, can it? Certainly violate a couple of our rules, wouldn't we? probably couldn't get a price high enough to get enough shares out there to get a $10 stock and so on and so forth. So you need the shares out there for float, because if you don't have a float, nobody trades the stock. A specific example is Hawaiian Airlines. We own that company as well. And that has, we made a mistake. We were supposed to take it completely private. And one of our directors, Peter Uberoth, the principal of that company, the chairman, said, no, we'll keep it public, a portion of it public. You right now have to make an order to buy or sell that stock. You know, it just, you just have to make an appointment to do it, because it's just there's no trading in it. It is a non-market. So that was what would happen to us with CTC, Cellular Tissue Corporation. So how do we get out? What's our exit strategy? Yes, Ashley.
Purely based on qualitative rationale, but I would think a merger would be the best bet, just because if you're in a specialty market, you want not thinking that's going to grow in incredible amounts. You want a big revenue, bigger overhead costs, and injury.
That is the way. Have you any names in that case that you thought we might be able to sell it to? Two of them, yeah. Two of them. James River is one. There's some reasons why James River wouldn't buy it, which is one of the protective reasons why they might not come in and inundate us and just bury us, which they could. Yes, Nicholas? I don't think so. Too small. I don't think it would be a problem. That's not a blockage to this one. What's that? No, I don't think antitrust would be a problem. Buy a little tiny company for not a problem. At least our fairness council says not a problem. We had to check them and see whether it might lose our company to somebody like Weyerhaeuser or James River or something like that. Weyerhaeuser is 20% of the market this time. Private label paper manufacturer. That's merger's the best idea, Ashley. What else? I got any other alternatives? Suppose we double the size of this company in 3 years. And did you look at the debt pay down and think about that? If we just sell this company to somebody else, another private buyer like us, for 4.1 times, same thing we paid for it, but 4 years from now, this generates a 38% internal rate of return for our investors. Here's another way of getting out. Just build a company, pay off your debt, then you can do a liquidating dividend if you wanted to. Another way of getting out. But 38%, does that sound like a good, does you folks think that's a good return? That sound like good return, yes?
It's not really an exit strategy.
Not totally an exit strategy, but it's,
It's a way of reason to capitalize and getting your value out of it.
yeah, that's all you're doing. But it's, if it's an exit, getting the value out, that's all. Yes, Bruce?
I think you get hammered on that.
Yeah. You would, swallow.
As a partnership.
Yeah. Passes through to the individual. I mean, I don't know what the tax laws are going to do in the next few years, but right now it would not be a very good idea. Not a good idea, but you could just run the company and hold it. And then if you wanted to get your capital out, you could do that. I think I'd go public at that time if I doubled it in sales. Yes?
Get around that tax problem by corporation?
You know something? There must be a tax maven around here someplace. I am not he. I don't know the answer to that. We've never gotten out of anything like this. I have seen people who have done it, who have gotten their value out. I don't know whether that's a good idea, but I'm not a tax person. I have to hire people to do that for me. I don't really know the answer. But how else can you get out? Couldn't you, if you went to 50 million in sales, take this thing public? Look at the profit margins. Niche market. I think so. Number 5. 2 banks. The rule is never have more than one, never have one bank. If you have one bank, you're in deep trouble. Everybody here must have one friend someplace, or a friend of your parents or something, that has been in a real estate deal where they have called the loan before it was due because the feds are putting the pressure on the banks. Banks, even though my daughter is a banker, fortunately she's not in the real estate end, so she can't tell me that I'm wrong about this, but experience we've had is that the banks are calling everything with a real estate name attached to it, and you can't get money for that sort of thing right now. So we have a company called the company store. We didn't finance it with a bank. Our bank is Westinghouse. So when the company store was going like this, 100 million in sales, in La Crosse, Wisconsin, they make down comforters, came to us to try to bail it out. We have operating people. I am not one of them. Didn't know how to fix things. So the company comes to us. We go to Westinghouse and say, if the existing lenders will stay in place, State of Wisconsin Investment Board and Prudential, Westinghouse will come in and put all new working capital in this thing and be our bank. So now we need to buy Scandia down. We need more inventory. We need more accounts receivable. We need more money. I can't get it from anybody in the equity markets. So I go to Westinghouse. Anybody been reading about Westinghouse? The president of Westinghouse, Inc. said he wants to liquidate Westinghouse Credit. $12 billion in loans outstanding. And he's going to liquidate it $4 billion a year. So we are in the process, once again, of negotiating with Westinghouse to increase our line of credit for $2 million because we bought Scandia down, and they're going out of business. So we violated our own rule. We had only Westinghouse. Very bad mistake, real stupid. Now, did we try to bring in somebody else like Chemical Bank and NBNA and some of these others? Yes. The fact that we didn't is not an excuse. We should have done that. But now we're stuck. Westinghouse says, not only do we not want to give you $2 million, we'd like you to take us out of this credit, please. And so I don't know how you do that. If any of you have any ingenious ideas or friends who are presidents of banks that we haven't touched yet, let me know, because it's really a very interesting time here. But it's a classic case of having one bank and making a mistake. Another reason you only want, yes?
How did you get the relationship with Westinghouse to begin with?
A friend of mine from school knew somebody there, and so we went and talked to him in Pittsburgh.
Do you have someone in your organization that has developed a relationship with all these pension funds around the country? Or are you going through, like, how do you access these private sources of?
Well, we're accessing private sources of capital in order to raise a fund in order to do equity deals right now. But you don't go to pension funds for these kind of deals. One, they're too small. Two, they do it through alternative investment people. So the pension funds aren't the place. Banks, secondary lenders, Chrysler Credit, Westinghouse, GE Credit, people like that. But, you know, huge mistake we made. I mean, a classic. And it's confusing us right now as to what the solution is, because we don't really have it. Now, there was another, no such thing as relationship banking anymore. I've been banking at Manufacturers Hanover Bank since 1975. Done 16 deals with that bank. Now it's called Chemical Bank. The guys that have been working with me are running the energy department. I don't know what energy departments mean. I don't know what that must be, oil and gas or something. I don't, no idea about that. Bankers change account officers like I change shirts. And so you want to be out of one single bank, preferably 3 now. My rule used to be 2 banks, but it's now 3. I mean, it's the only protective device that you can have. And Hawaiian Airlines owes $125 million to Security Pacific Bank. But Security Pacific Bank is not Security Pacific Bank anymore. It's now called Bank of America. So now we're dealing with a different bank. And if we'd had two banks lending to that group, Hawaiian Airlines, we might have had a better shot at some restructuring that we need to do because of what's going on in the airline business. But that's a major rule. Don't break that one. An ESOT buyout, employee stock ownership trust, you've probably seen some of those. I'm not a professional at that. In Hawaiian Airlines, because of a first restructuring, we had to give an ESOT 20% of the equity of the company, so it wasn't a total buyout, but it was a way of getting some capital in the company. Employee stock ownership trust, I'm really not a guru about that. Now, not a exit itself, but a means to an exit is the auction. I'm interested, yes, Sherry?
Stock ownership, I've never understood what that means.
Neither do I.
You can give me a definition. I mean, does it mean that?
It's employee stock ownership trust. What you do is borrow money from the bank. The employees don't borrow it in their name, they borrow it in the corporation's name. Interest is paid to the bank and it's tax deductible to the corporation. And they use it to purchase stock in the corporation. And the employees own their particular percentage of that shares that the money's been put up by some third party.
So employees literally own some percentage of the company, but and that's up to 100. No
But
one
you can add up to 100 if you want to do it. You can do a whole ESOP for the whole company. But we did one for 20% of Hawaiian Airlines.
And what's the benefit of that to the company?
The benefit of that to the company is it's a way of infusing equity by getting an interest deduction to the bank. It's also your employees own stock. There's some theory that that is beneficial. We operate under that theory. I'm not so sure as I get older that it really works, but we'll see. You know, who knows? As a,
It's
yes.
also a cheaper source of financing because the bank, it's not as tax deductible, or the bank doesn't pay tax on the interest income, so they can offer a cheaper rate, an after-tax rate of 9%, they can offer 6%. There was a huge sort of push towards ESOPs just while everybody's taking advantage of that tax.
Good point, thank you. I forgot to say that. I did remember that, but I don't know very much about those things, obviously. The auction. This is a means of getting out. Say, if you own a company or you're managing a company, you may want to consider this. If you own Cellu Tissue, would you have gone to Solomon Brothers or First Boston or somebody like that and hired them to represent you? Sort of a spear carrier thing, maybe. Or would you have tried to find a private buyer? Anybody have any opinions about one is more beneficial or hurtful than the other? Can you think about why? Yes, John?
A $17 million purchase price might be a little small for Solomon or one of the bulge bracket firms. They really, well, it depends on how hungry they are.
Used to be. Good point about 2 years ago. Right now, if you walk in there with walk in there with a shopping bag, they'll ask you whether they can take it public.
You were asking on the sell side, right?
Right.
They're going to represent you on a sale. So I guess right now, yeah, they might do it, but historically it was too small. But they also have a wide dispersion of clients out there as opposed to a smaller company. But with a smaller broker, and if it's a very specialized industry, you might get better coverage and sort of specialized.
That's true. You probably wouldn't in this instance, very good point. You wouldn't in this instance use a Merrill or somebody that big. You'd use somebody that may understand your business or so on. And that might be a good idea. The problem is they don't have the contacts, number one, and they may not have the professionals inside that know how to structure the transaction and negotiate with a list of potential buyers. But does somebody else have some things to say about the auction process? Okay, well, I'll say, oh yes, good.
The auction gives the opportunity to make others afraid. Like the potential buyers would be people like James Beaver. They would consider buying it more than as being attractive. by itself more than the danger of having someone else, some competitor buying it instead of yourself.
So would you think the auction process would help that?
Well,
James River knows of that company.
he,
Let me explain the auction process 1 second, then I'll come with it. Auction process is you hire a broker or dealer or an investment banker to put a book together, like one of these things right here, and then they mail it out to 150 of their closest personal friends, telling the client, of course, that they're going to send it to a very select few of which they can all approve first. You believe that, and I'm going to tell you that there is a black hole in the sky. This is not true, okay? So just remember that part of the auction. I'll come by whether that's good or bad later, yes.
You have a number of buyers who are interested. If you have a number of buyers, then it's a very useful process to sell the property. If you only have a few buyers, it's probably better to negotiate.
But if I'm the spear carrier, if I'm Art Shield and say, look, I represent you, CTC, Cellular Tissue, I said, I can find you the 5 best buyers and we'll pick it and we'll get the best price through an auction. You find an agent, a spear carrier, and they say they can do that. Whether they can or not is irrelevant because they just go through one of those Moody's lists of industry specialists or Forbes or Fortune and just mail it out. We'd like to buy the company, this book. Here's the price. Yes, Nicholas.
You have to be careful with the agencies that own self-interest.
Yeah.
I guess.
But first of all, about the auction, there is no such thing as an auction where anybody's privacy is retained. Absolutely not. If anybody tells you that, it is a stark, raving, mad lie. So what they do is mail it out, as I said, to 150 of their closest personal friends and wait and see what happens. And then they get the top 10 buyers and they go contact them, probably by phone and so on. Then they get the top 5, and the top 5 all want to visit the company. Now, if you're involved in a company, you have to make some strategic decisions about how many people you want wandering through the place when you find an owner who is ready to bail out. And what is that going to do to the rest of your employees? What's that going to do to the morale? Remember American Can and Joe Bass? It was better to sell for those employees. American Can made that decision. It was still economic because we were at the same price that A.B. Dick was when he bought it. But you know, it was much easier for the employees just to have the management buy it, less disruptive. And that's a major thing in a company. You know, these companies don't really, employees get a little skittish when people start wandering through and so on, talking to clients and customers, yes?
Feeling competitive information should be even a bigger concern than your employees seeing that you're selling out. If you pick one company that you finally decide is the best partner, and you negotiate with them, you open your books up to them, and sell it, that's one thing. If you have 10 companies up for auction, running through your company, going through your strategic plans and your operating information, you've totally opened yourself up to the market. The whole value of the company decreases.
Very, very, very good point. Now, what the broker-dealer will tell you is that you sign a confidentiality agreement, John, so you're looking at the information in confidence, right? If you believe that, it's the same as believing that, you know, it's going to be, everything's going to be fine with 150 of my closest personal friends. Don't worry about it. I won't do that. Right. So the confidentiality agreement doesn't mean very much, but there is a legal recourse if something happens to the company as a result of information divulged by that. But an auction is a terrible way to go. Terrible way to go. Now, if you get somebody down here speaking, as Professor Smith does, it's from Merrill Lynch, First Boston, or Solomon, I suspect you may hear the opposite side of that. It'll be okay because they're wrong. But it is always good to have a second opinion. Golden State Vintners. That's the last case in that thing. That's called GSV. That's the largest. Figured this would get your attention more than the rest. Hair preparation companies. Executive search, I thought, might get your attention because if I know the people at Korn Ferry and I was the founder of that thing, and you folks are out of a job in a year and a half, probably be useful that you know me because I know them and they're good people to know when you want a job. Anyway, Golden State Vintners is the largest grape grower and wine processor in the country. It does not have a label, so you can't go out and buy it, fortunately, because they make Sutter Home, Callaway, Tad Swiss Colony, Mogan David. They crush grapes and then give it to everybody else to bottle, the people who own those grapes. The vineyards, 100% of those grapes are sold on contract to E&J Gallo, and that is about 14% of Gallo's production. Now, a couple of things about this case. Can anybody see an exit strategy for this? If you can, please let me know what it is. Because I've got no idea how we get out of this beast. First of all, in the Central Valley, people were going to start building in Fresno and Visalia. And the wine, about 5 years when we bought it, what you could have done was you just could have kicked the grapes into the ground and sold the land for houses, right? And the farmers were coming along because there's a lot of water back 5 years ago. Now guess what? There is no water in the Central Valley. 25% of the farmers have gone out of business. Golden State has its own water supply, so it's okay from its own standpoint. But the real estate values from the standpoint of alternative investments like houses or something is a zippo. Now, since I've now told you that and given you that piece of information, how else do we get out? Panic? What was that?
Golf course?
Golf course? No water? Dry golf course. Very dry golf course. I mean, people have asked what you do. You fade 10 and punt. You know, I have no idea what you do. There is no exit strategy for this company. But if any of you think of one, you know, over a glass of wine tonight, please give me a call or come by my office in New York and see me. Maybe hire you if you can find an exit strategy for this. Yes, John? Good for you. I like that. Yes.
Is it profitable or what's profitable? Why don't
$7 million in cash flow a year.
Hold it.
Unassailable.
Hold it. I mean, you can use it to finance other things.
Well, so don't know about that. You know, the one thing wrong with the ag business is that God or Zeus or somebody controls your destiny. Because when you want it to be sunny, he rains. When you want it raining, it suns. And so there is no way to determine what's going to happen to your company. We've been very lucky. You know, the weather has not been horrendous, and so we've been $7 million of cash flow a year. But we could hold it, yes, but the investors don't get liquid that way. So it's not an exit. You know, you need an exit in the world. Got to get out of these things. Yes?
And the wine companies don't want to vertically integrate, I guess. You can't go to Ernst & Young and say, have I got a deal for you?
Well, they only own 36% of the wine market in I think the world, and some higher percentage of that in the U.S. But it's they don't need this company. They need our grapes. Theoretically, you could sell our grapes, the whole vineyards to them, but they don't grow their own grapes. They don't want to do that. I have no idea what the exit strategy is about this. But here we have, the purpose of this case is several-fold at the end of that. Did you look at, we're buying the debt back from the FDIC that we used to finance part of this purchase along the way. Does it look like a fair deal to you? Yeah, 52 cents on the dollar. Would you do that? Not a bad idea. Looks, we're going to finance with $5.2 million, I think it says in there. $3 million of a convertible preferred stock, same as this original stock, and 2.2 of a 19% dividend-paying preferred. Not a PIK preferred. Anybody know what I mean by PIK preferred? Paid-in-kind preferred. Okay, we're not doing that. We're paying. This is real dollars. Would you buy that unit of that? Some part of the convertible preferred, some part of the redeemable preferred. Does that sound like a good deal to you? Sorry?
19%.
Huh?
19%.
19%. My hearing's not real good. Does that look like a good deal, anybody? You like that? Well, it's working. This is real time as well. But that is the market, though. If you want to know what's going on in the world of finance today, that is what it takes to do some kind of deal like this. And so if somebody tells you the prime rate is 6 or 6.5 or 7, this is what it takes to do equity deals now. Equity/debt, I mean, that's a quasi-subordinated, I mean, a quasi-mezzanine piece of financing this thing is. So anyway, you think that's a good deal, but you don't know the exit strategy for me. Okay. 6th rule. Take the money when it's available. Not when you need it. Now, that sounds a little controversial. Maybe I could get a discussion going about that one. Take money when it's available, not when you need it. Slightly ties into the belly punch game, but not exactly. What I'm trying to say is, you know, if it's available, like it's cheap right now, but hard to get. But if it's cheap and you could get it, take it. That's what the people in the back page of the Wall Street Journal, look at the number of companies going public. This is Beauty Labs, Inc. This is Redken all over again. Take it and run, go for the gold. I mean, you know, like the dogs are eating it, so we're just going to feed them as much as we can. It's as simple as that. Yes?
You're actually going for something longer term, you do see a need, you know, down the road to use these funds, but just to go out for the sake of going out is ridiculous. Those funds are cheap. That's just generating investment banking fees.
Yeah, it's like anybody telling somebody, you walk into an institution, dollars. The FDIC owns over 48% of this company in warrant. If we'd gone out last year and found this, we're going to give up for this and a Heller exactly 48% of the company. If we'd gone out when the money was available, better than it is right now, we could have saved probably half of that. So one of the reasons that I make an interesting resource from time to time is I've committed so many bloody mistakes in this business that, you know, you can learn from it. But there's one more mistake. Last year we could have done it and didn't do it, didn't get the money when it's available. Now we need it because the FDIC says we're going to sell you the loans. So we're scurrying around like little rats saying, oh, help. So that's take the money when you can, preferably on the first financing of anything. Get as much as you can, because when you need it, you find it's probably gone away. My last rule, I'm going to write this one out nicely. Greed cancels leadership. Joe Trout had a partner. One of them was us, but we were a little partner. One was as a lawyer, it was another little partner. But he had a partner that owned about 30% of what Joe Trout owned. The guy got sick. And so he went to him in the hospital and said, you're not holding up your end of the bargain, so I think I'd like you to give me your stock back. Knowing full well that we have an offer now, which the man in the hospital did not know, for $38.6 million for the company. Now his employees found out about this, and so did the guy in the hospital find out about this, and so on and so forth. There is my favorite example of greed cancels leadership. I would love to have that sale have not gone through, except we made a lot of money doing it for our investors. So, but just ethically and morally, I would like to have Joe Trout not have made that sale, or we made it for him and made that money, because greed does cancel leadership. Here's another one. A Eastern Seaboard, this is a true story, I'm not going to tell you the name of the company because it's going on. Eastern Seaboard Company in the service business, doing for the last 5 years $6 million in revenues. It is in a search business, as in the Northeast. Went up 1 year to 10 million 2 years ago, and is now back down at 6. Been doing this since about 1984. Real numbers, just no name this time. We had an offer to buy this company for $35 million. Once again, from a British company. Their methodology, once again, don't get me on this technically, but they can integrate financial statements not the same way as we do, and it works to their advantage to be able to buy companies and so on. And so it doesn't look like they're paying these enormous prices, somehow, some way. Anyway, I'm not technically competent to discuss that, but we had an offer for $35 million for this company. And you know what? Can anybody guess what he wanted? He wanted $40 million for the company. Now, this is a service company. This is an executive search firm. It's got 28 employees. And he owns 50% of it, and somebody's going to give him $35 million. This was in the heyday of when you could sell service companies for multiples of revenues, you know? Different times now. Different times. Now, if you could sell it for 1 times revenues, you'd be really lucky. Maybe 1.5, if you could sell any service company today. Well, guess what? The deal blew. He didn't get his money. Greed not only canceled leadership, but canceled his net worth. So, you know, there's a classic example of it. And he also tried to do it himself. He brought us in the middle of it later on, and then brought somebody else, or we brought somebody else in with us too, and we couldn't save this deal. It got down to about 17 million, which I think is a fair price. I would have done it 3 times his average revenues. I would have done that one like yesterday. Now we can't. Now it's not worth 6, maybe worth 6. Lots of his employees knew about some of these numbers. Those folks are at Russ Reynolds, Ward Howell, Korn Ferry. They're at other places now because they're not there, because the greed of one individual canceled his leadership role. So that's a serious one. And part about the, I have one saying that I like that goes with the public offering one, but you're only as good as your last quarter. Nothing dries faster than the tears of gratitude. So if you've made somebody money and then you're looking real good and you go back to them for more money, or you say, gosh, this is good, somehow they just don't remember it. It's funny about that. Well, I don't have any more ways to exit. I mean, I do have some more, but they're bizarre, and I don't understand them very much. So my partners understand them. But I've now gone rambling on, much less participation in this class than I probably, it's my fault. But I used to teach at YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. I wasn't a young president, never have been, but I taught there, and they have a thing called take-home value. You shouldn't leave this classroom unless you've taken something out of it. So, do we have any questions about those 7 rules of finance? Or the cases, or the market, or what have you? Yes, sir.
I'm still a little hazy on the sale valuation rule. Sounded a little bit like greed cancels leadership rule.
Well, maybe more bird in the hand, though. I mean,
sale valuation basically bird in the hand.
Yeah, but there's 32 million in cash versus 20 million, and you're still going to run your company, but you're going to own 83% of it. And what are the delta between 20 and you can almost somebody did this at Bayesian economics, which is the course that I came as close to flunking at Harvard Business School as any. There's some utility curve, something called a utility curve. You can go from 20 to 32, find out where you are on this utility curve or something, and that's will tell you whether you should stay here or take this. Anyway, but the whole, in some cases, is worth more than the parts. And you must evaluate what it is before you take that one. That's all. John?
Was that if the valuation, instead of taking the 32, if they said we want 40, then it could have fallen through. It's take what you've got rather than dreaming for more.
That clearly would be the greed deal. Yes?
When we're setting up a business, what should we be doing to make sure that when it's time to exit, it's that much easier to get out?
Well, first of all, have a couple of banks. That's the first thing, okay? And I don't know what kind of business it is, but you ought to figure out your plan about, will somebody buy you? Are you a high-tech guy? Or maybe you can go public. Those are your ways. Those are your ways. And there are two types of buyers, strategic and financial. Yes, Alan?
Cases, they generally come to valuations simplistically in terms of multiples of cash flow. Is that basically how you think about your acquisitions, or do you, I mean, is that how you come about a number, how you get a gut feeling for it, or do you run all sorts of analysis?
Yeah, huge analysis. You do an enormous amount of due diligence.
What do you place more confidence in? Your gut feeling or the?
I place more confidence in my gut feeling because I've been around so bloody long. And I know how to ask the right questions, but it's my gut about the managers. And there may be some people here from that company store case. It was about 10 days ago, but I made a classic error on that one. But it was my instincts that I do better than that. My partners do better technically. They're from the age group of you all to about 40. Only 8 of us, so half of those are operating people. But we do an awful lot of due diligence. I mean, every single number. Ron Selmer on Cellular Tissue can talk to you all day. He knows more about that company. The owner, the 72-year-old owner who's been in the paper business all of his career, says Ron Selmer knows more about his company than he does. Ron's our partner. So technically we know the business. I just don't know it that well.
What about from years of being in the business? I mean, you just have a feeling for the different industries.
I know what I can finance. Yes.
Yeah, there's no fancy discounted cash flow analysis. That's what you're
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of financial data, and you got your terminal values, we call it, values of EBIT, cash flow, but none of the stuff I believe. So you deal primarily at EBIT, and that's like multiples of EBIT, right?
Multiples of EBITs are what it takes to deal with the banks, and it's an instantaneous reaction from our lending institutions. What are you paying for it? And the same thing for our investor group. We have 25 investors that put up the equity. What's the EBIT multiple? And so, because they were paying, they remember when they were paying 10 and 11, they're stuck in their capital calls now. But this is a very, very good transaction. Yes, Nicholas?
Company, we just started up as a partnership, was a company or an incorporated?
Incorporated.
Very beginning.
And incorporated, yeah. These things are done, each deal we do is a limited partnership. We're the general partner for we shelter our general partnership because we're once removed. We set up a corporation to be the general partner, so we're not really it. But that's only for convenience to buy the equity in a company. If I were going to own a company and just 100% or started out, it'd be a corporation. And that's just because of limited liability, that's all. If you get another partner, that other partner, you're responsible for what they do. And I just have seen people burned like that. Yes?
One thing you didn't really talk about was the motivation of management and the people behind the exit strategies in terms of which option to elect for. And I know, I guess from personal experience, that depending on what management wants to do really determines which one of those options you want to pick, or which one of your, if you have multiple options as to which one they're going to go for.
Yeah, Some people want to stay with the company. Bill Dodenhoff is 72 years old. He only works 1 week a month. The company's still growing like that. Semi-retired. He wants to stay on with the company. He's taking a $3.5 million note back. You like the amount of equity in this thing? Our 3.5 plus his 3.5. We gave him a right to buy 5% stock similar to us as a limited partner with us if he wants to do it. He's taking that. So there's a guy that A, didn't want to do an auction because he didn't want his company trampled to death. He thought we were small, private, and quiet and honest, and so he dealt with us for a certain period of time. He gave us a finite time frame. He might have put it in auction. Solomon Brothers John was the one that was going to do it for him, so that's the one we were worried about getting in there because he knows somebody there, and they're hungry now. They wouldn't have done it before. But that was the right strategy for him, not to sell it to a strategic partner because his 4 senior managers would be gone, and he would be gone. So that's, if you want to have some continuity with your people and so on, my experience is a private sale does it better than a strategic partner. Sometimes you can get more money from a strategic partner. You can't, financial buyers are topped out at 5 times EBIT right now. Strategic buyers are not.
So another cycle, 3 or 4 years ago, financial buyers would pay more weight to strategic buyers.
Absolutely, absolutely, no question. We would have paid 10 or 11 times. Did. Fortunately, we were lucky. Now, we still own 4. We can't get out of the 4. Nobody here got the exit strategy for me. I'm a little sad about that. Drove all the way down here from New York to get the exit strategy for Golden State and haven't got it yet. Keep thinking, though.
Maybe you can merge it with Hawaiian Airlines.
Professor Smith was here when I told him why Hawaiian Airlines should never have been purchased. That was one of the classes. Never do that deal. Well, sure enough, it's turned around. The beast has turned around. We may save it yet. May save it. Yes?
More about your firm, where you have offices, how the business comes to your door.
Be a very short conversation. We have one office. It's in New York. We have 8 people. Been in business since '75. I joined in 1980. The partner that founded Art Shield died in '81 in a scuba diving accident. I was left with one other partner, one other young man, and myself and a secretary. I went out and put a board of advisors together. If you read our brochure, it's a very interesting one. General Motors would kill to have this board, but these guys weren't rich and famous then. They were just old friends, and it worked. Peter Uberoth, Dick Ferry, head of the largest real estate investment trust, former head of OMB, really good people. Professor Seeler, good people, really good people, and very helpful to us. And finally, in 1986, 85, they said, "How come you're doing so poorly?" I said, "We have no capital." So they went out and found 25 people to invest with us. These are very, very wealthy people who have a high sense of integrity and business ethic, have been successful at what they do. And they're our equity source. And so we've done 6 deals, exited 2, still are stuck with 4, have 4. And that's the long and short of it. We're different from most people in that we operate companies. We have 3 full-time partners that go in and run the companies. Frank Curie is running the company store. Jeff O'Neill is running Golden State Vintners. I'm not an operating person. The only time I tried...
If you do these 2 deals, it's a big year.
What's that?
If you do these 2 deals, it's a big year.
Well, 2 things have happened in the market. Yeah, if we sell them, we will do well at them, but it's a big year because you can't get very high fees for doing transactions anymore in our business, and lenders don't allow you to charge management fees anymore. So they're very cautious about that. They say, "You're an equity owner. How come you're charging a fee for what you're doing?" I say, "Well, I'm charging a fee because I got to pay the overhead." And we're working very hard at this sort of thing, and so on and so forth. And they yawn once again and look out the window. So it's a very tough time out there. Anybody that wants to go into my industry, the merchant banking industry, come and see me because you'll never do it after I tell you why you don't want to. I mean, it's the only place you don't get paid unless you're successful. And everybody, and you got 96 elements up here that you don't control. But anyway, that's what our firm is. Small, private, quiet, 8 people, and 8 principals, that's all. But 5 companies, yes, sir. Last question.
You stay away from high-tech-based companies, biomedical, biotechnology?
Yes. High-tech?
Is that because you're looking at a multiple times EBIT, far greater than you really want to pay?
It's not only that, there are other people that are better at it than we are. Strategic buyers are the right place, or strategic investors. You know, Xerox should put up money for those kind of things, or GE Credit, or somebody that likes that business. We don't know about that business. Multiples are too high. We're not using what we know how to do, which is really fix sick companies. We turn around companies that are not doing well. Yes? Sorry?
How do you search out the deals?
Remember that group of 25 investors that I told you about? They see the deals, and I go out and network them. Plus my own network. After 30 years, I see lots of deals. People know. They say, look, if it's not working, call Turner. He can really screw it up. Thanks for your time.